Welcome back, everybody. Episode 81 of the Light Warriors Unleashed podcast. And I am just so grateful today, like I am all the time, but like as we move through these guest episodes, I get to learn, expand, confirm, be in new energy. And I am just loving the vibe. And today is no doubt the exact same type of energy that I love to dive into, where Amanda, this beautiful, beautiful guest, used to work for projects for NASA. And, if you don't know, but NASA's owned by the government and they are owned obviously by the elitists, which are creating a certain mechanism. And I dive into a couple of things into here to ask her questions about, but we don't hit the major stuff about NASA, and we don't go into the depths of like the conspiracy theory part, which I could have dove into, but I chose not to, because a lot of the messaging that we moved through was like scientific world and spiritual world, and how they do overlap and how they come together, and how we are more leaning into the woo that now can be measured scientifically. And we talked through that, and her medical intuitive side, and how she's now working within her own gifts and infrastructures and using her embodied physical form to be able to move stuff through. And then, we add in a couple of glitter and sprinkles of like different dynamics of, indigenous roots and coming back to our roots and what it's going to look like in the future, and how we're in the evolution of the Earth's fifth like lifetime, we'll call it, and what that actually means. And this was amazing. And I love that I don't know some of these people coming on to the podcast, that they felt drawn to fill an application and I felt drawn to bring them on. So it's like I'm discovering who they are in real time, just like you. And I actually really love this. And just so grateful for it all. So without any further ado, I want to introduce you to Amanda, this beautiful being who's doing such amazing work in the world. And come and listen to our conversation about all this dynamic stuff. And I'm just really grateful at this very moment of time to be able to lead this, to hold this, to be with this. So no further ado, episode 81, Light Warriors Unleashed podcast. And I'm going to lead the podcast by laughing, because this is just exactly how this is going to go out. I know we're going to be laughing, but also talking about some intensity stuff, but not in the serious way, I don't think. Right, Amanda? Like, I think we're going to be able to just like flow through in truth, and maybe, who knows what the fuck's going to happen and how this is going to show up. But I'm excited you're here. I I met you 25 minutes ago, and I feel like we're like BFFs already, and I just can't wait to like hash out your life on a podcast and like talk about stuff. So like, are you excited to be here?
I'm thrilled to be here. Oh my gosh, seriously. Okay, yeah. 25 minutes ago we meet and you're like, "Okay, so we're going to do this and this." And I was like, I got to go to the bathroom.
I know.
You were like, "Go, go, go."
Yeah. I'm like, don't worry about me. I'll just chill out here waiting for you. We're good. So that's how we met. And like,
right?
now we started talking about all this juicy stuff and didn't hit record because that would just be productive. And here we are now. So let's talk, Amanda. There's a lot we got to lean into today, because I love to lean into this conversations about conversations, we'll call it. And tell everybody, firstly, I want to open the gate off with like the hot topic of NASA. And before we hit record, I was like, oh my god, when you like sent your application in, I was like, oh, she used to work for NASA. I'm so excited, because there's a lot, for some of you guys that don't know, there's a lot of distortion that happens in NASA, and some stuff I'm not even going to mention because I can't prove it yet. But somewhere along the line, I'm sure the truth will come out, and I'll be like, see, I've been telling you guys this for a long time. But tell us about this journey. So you used to work for NASA. You do completely different work now, which we're going to talk about too. But like, what was it like working for NASA? What did this feel like for the intuitive side to you? And yeah, wherever you want to kind of maneuver. Let's go.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so straight out of college, I was an athlete. I was a softball player, Division 1 and Division 2 softball player, and I was working on my mechanical and aerospace engineering degree. Those two things don't go well together.
I was like, oh my god.
It's really hard to do both. So I was setting myself up for this, and I knew like my dream job was to work on a NASA program. And I moved to Colorado intuitively knowing like the company I want to work for is there. They're going to have the NASA program I want to work on. And that was before Lockheed Martin was the company that I worked for. before they got the Artemis program, which back then it was called the Constellation program, and then it became just Orion, and now it's the Artemis program. So coming out of college, I got the job on Orion, and I'll continue to call it Orion because that was what I was working on. At this point, I'm 27 years old, so it took me a while to get through college because of being an athlete, and thrown into basically the deep end. When I landed at this company on this program, they were like, "We don't have a computer for you. We're not sure when you're going to have one. We don't have a desk for you, so you're going to use this person's desk. He's out on FMLA, so you're going to sit here." And they put me amongst the propulsion team, the ordnance team, the people who play with things that blow up. And I was stoked. It was like, wait. That's not my job, but I'm going to get to hear constantly around me because we're in cubicle land. I'm going to get to hear all about the things that they're blowing up because they were doing a ton of testing on how to get the forward bay cover to launch off of the vehicle so that the airbags can pop open just in case the vehicle tips over, and how to get the it's called the LAS, but the dome that sits up on top of the vehicle and basically rips the vehicle away from the rocket in case the rocket decides it wants to explode. Their job was to make the ordnance pop that off so that they could rip the vehicle away from the rocket. So I get to hear all of this stuff as a 27-year-old fresh out of college engineer working as a checker. So checker is like quality control.
I was gonna say, so that'd be like data entry, like in the NASA world.
Not data entry. My job was to make sure that
I say it with love.
My job was to make sure that the parts that people were designing, the engineers were designing parts and putting them on the blueprints. My job was to make sure that those parts were actually manufacturable. Like when the person who had to go and machine the parts got this blueprint, they understood what the heck it was, and that part could actually fit with the part next to it. So it's a pretty spectacular role. And luckily before that I'd worked in precision tooling, and I'd got to dabble in machining, and my dad's a machinist, so like I grew up with this kind of knowledge, and because of the way that I absorb information, I could absorb his information and just roll with learning all of it on the job, essentially. But I had other jobs before that set me up for this position. And the people who were hiring me, I found out 7 years later that they were like, we had to hire you because, and this one kills me, it absolutely guts me. They had to hire me because if they didn't, they wouldn't be allowed to fill that position later.
Oh my God.
So it was one of those like fill it or it's gone things. And they were like, and if you didn't work out, we would have just gotten rid of you. But obviously, we're having this conversation 7 years later. It obviously worked out. And I was just like, wow, write that shit down.
At least it wasn't a box you had to tick. Well, you kind of were a box, but it's like, oh, well, we need to have this diversity. And so you fit the diversity. Here you go. That's a whole other thing. But.
On several levels. Yeah.
Right.
I was a subcontractor, so I wasn't a direct employee at Lockheed Martin. Which the company that I was coming through was a small disadvantaged business, and NASA gave brownie points, more money to Lockheed Martin for that.
Here it is.
And the small disadvantaged company, right? The small disadvantaged company was veteran owned as well as female owned. So I was like, both things that I'm like rah for. I'm a female in a male's world. Engineering is definitely the man's side of the house. Though Orion was a beautiful way to see it. I worked almost 50-50. It was 50% female engineers and 50% male engineers. It was beautiful. Whereas all of the jobs that I had prior to that, it was 95% male and maybe one female in the entire company that was an engineer. So it was really beautiful to see that on Orion. I think the other thing to mention is the way that NASA wanted to roll this out with Lockheed Martin was we're going to have some of the good old boys on the team, and then we're going to groom a bunch of kiddos, a bunch of young engineers, and we're going to grow them up on the program. And that's a brilliant idea, except for the fact that, and I'm going to throw Lockheed Martin under the bus right now.
Yeah.
Lockheed Martin does not have their shit together when it comes to creating a new program. They have their central, and they're getting better at this from what I hear from my friends who still work there. But 16 years ago, they had a central document that said, this is how to do a new program. But we on Orion were testing out new software, new tools to put engineering through the rigmarole. So my first job on that program was to come up with the process for releasing engineering.
Wow.
And I was like, wait. I work at Lockheed Martin and y'all don't have a process for this already?
Yeah.
Sweet.
No. Yeah.
Give it to the one that's just out of college.
Yeah.
Go. And I did the best that I could. And years later, they should have fixed it. Hopefully they changed it, some of the things, but I was trying to follow the original guideline book that Lockheed Martin has for all their programs and use all of the tools that we were using on the program. So it was a shit show.
Yeah. Shit, I can imagine.
Yeah. And when I got there, we'd basically just won the program and we were in the middle of the first test build, which was called Pad Abort 1. Pad Abort 1 is all about that last system taking the rocket or taking the vehicle away from the rocket. And we were going to do that on the pad. So no rocket built, but doing that same action. So that was the first test vehicle that I worked on at that. And I got to learn a whole lot about NASA.
Yes.
We were triple redundant in certain areas, which meant we had to have like 3 of the same thing everywhere.
Yeah.
And when you're working with things that go into space, gravity is expensive.
I can imagine.
So we were trying to figure out like how do we satisfy NASA's requirements and still make a product that's viable. And with Pad Abort 1, NASA was the one who owned the capsule at that time. So they were developing their capsule, and then we owned all of the mechanisms that went around it and the last. And their engineering, so their CAD, computer-aided drafting, was not, we always were working with an outdated model. And when you're working with ordnance, things that blow up, on a mechanism that has to function properly, and you have the wrong model of the vehicle, things don't go very well. And this slowed us down tremendously, and we tripled how much it would cost to make what we were doing. We had to charge NASA triple because we kept on having these CAD issues. And so I was constantly working with the lead CAD engineer and trying to figure out how do we streamline some of these processes so that the engineering can get released faster, because that was one of the many things that I was trying to work on when it came to let's produce the process of releasing engineering. And the higher ups were like, it's taking too long. And I was just like, it's the CAD. I can't help you. Like, it's not the process, it's the CAD. And then we had NASA people. We had NASA people sitting around us all the time, essentially, overlording what we were doing.
Which actually feels like it's kind of like a thing there. Like that's like the overlording energy feels that way. I got some really controversial questions to ask you, actually. They're coming through.
I bet you do.
But keep telling me what you want to tell me before I lead into this.
So we had a boatload of lessons learned on Pad Abort 1. On PA1, we had so many lessons learned, and one of those was this overlording of having the NASA people constantly around us, making sure we're doing all the right things. And there's nothing wrong with that when you're creating a vehicle that goes in space and astronauts have to be safe, and NASA is a very public program. Now it's a government owned program, but it's very public. Everything that happens to those astronauts and those vehicles, everybody knows. And I think one of the most fascinating things that I learned from that was that NASA put more information on their website than the people who were working on the program actually knew. So when we wanted to find something out about what was, what they're shooting for or what they're expecting, we went to the public NASA website to find out.
Yeah. It's crazy. I know.
And so, like, the layers of bureaucracy.
Yeah. So much goes on there. I know. And most people don't know this. Yeah. Go ahead. Go for it. Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah. I have to go. I have to go into that bureaucracy piece because
I
remember distinctly. So when Obama came into office and became president, he canceled the program.
So I
remember one of my peers. I'm still friends with him. He was hired the day that Obama canceled the program. And he was like, well, I just got here. Should I do anything? And I was like, oh, there's plenty of work to do, because we were in the middle of 3 tests at that point. And Pad Abort 1 had almost launched at that point, and that was years after we were done doing all the engineering for it. We were working on AA1, which is Ascent Abort, and then we were working on AA2 at the same time, and we were working on EFT1, which that was the vehicle that if you watch the movie The Martian, at the end of the movie, they use the actual footage from EFT1's return into the atmosphere, which is so cool. And then we were also starting to work on the production vehicles. So EM1 and EM2, which they're now called A1 and A2, Artemis 1 and Artemis 2. So those were all the vehicles that I touched on that program. But Obama coming in and canceling the program, and then watching our governor and governors from all the other states that had a big chunk in Orion going and pushing Obama to change his mind. And then when he changes his mind, we got rid of the rocket and decided it's just going to be the service module, the crew module, and the launch abort. And then we'll come up with a rocket to ride on eventually. And we'll come up with a mission eventually. And for the entirety of when I was on that program, we had no mission. We had no idea where we were going. They were like, we could go to an asteroid. We could go somewhere in deep space. We could go to Mars. We can shoot past the moon. That wasn't on the target. But now Trump came in and he was like, all right, we're going to call it Artemis, and we're going to the moon. We haven't been there in a while. Let's go back.
Okay, let's talk about that real quick. My question for you is, do you actually think JFK, like, that it actually landed on the moon? No. Do you think that we actually landed on the moon?
Yes.
Like, your own personal
We have
opinion?
all of yeah, absolutely. We have like on Orion, we had to use all of the engineering that didn't get burned up in a fire to build Orion and the LAS and the service module. So we had people that were on those programs on Apollo working on our program with us. Those were the good old boys, or some of the good old boys. But they could, I mean, I can look at like Apollo 13 and pick out the actors who played the people I worked with.
Yeah.
So without a shadow of a doubt, yes, we went to the moon. We did some crazy things to get there.
Yeah.
And we're not doing those kinds of crazy things with Artemis to get there. NASA's got a lot more safety precautions in place, merely because how many shuttles did we watch blow up?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
How many know the story of Apollo 13, right?
Yeah.
These are, it's highly publicized, highly public knowledge when shit hits the fan for NASA.
Yeah.
So yeah, we went to the moon.
Yeah, well,
We
because
landed
there's
on the
some
moon. You
people
can
like,
actually get out a
yeah,
telescope and look and see the flag sitting on the moon.
yeah, it's interesting. It's like some people think that it's all staged, right? That we're actually in a Hunger Games
Yes.
simulation. And that would be my next question to you, to be like, and like I said to you before, we talk about all the different kinds of random stuff, and I don't have really an
Woo!
opinion about any of this right now. Like I don't. I'm open to all the possibilities because I don't know. I've never been
Yep.
on anything that shot me into the sky. Like I don't know. Like I really don't know. Right? But it's like, so
Yeah.
people say that that we're in this simulation. So I was going to ask you, would be like, do you actually think the solar systems are real? Like, do you think that that's an
Holy
actual
shit.
thing? I know, right? Like you never
Yeah.
thought that you'd
There,
like be talking about this on the podcast. Like,
if you bust out with the flat earther question, I'm out.
I was gonna ask that next. I was gonna ask you to be like, what do you
Oh,
think? Is the Earth flat? You know, it's fun.
I gotta go.
It's fun to see, yeah, to see these things. Like I don't know. Like I don't. Like I really don't know. I don't have an opinion on it. I'm not like, because I'm just like, I really don't know. And nor do I really care, because if we're in a simulation, then we're in a simulation. And I've chosen to be in this simulation, and I'm here for a reason. And that's the actual main objective and goal. Right. But like,
There.
yeah, just your
Yeah.
thoughts. You can go there and then we'll
All
shift
right.
gears.
Yep. Yep. So this is where we merge the woo and the
Yes.
science.
Yes.
Uh, so yes, we're all in a simulation. We're in our own existence. We're all experiencing these meat suits and this
Yeah.
density
Yep.
individually, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not one person's experience on this planet
Mm-hmm.
in this gravity is the same.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Yeah.
possibly know everything about another person's existence. It's
Oh, for sure.
impossible because there's so many things going on inside someone's brain. Neurologically, it's impossible, and we hardly understand the brain to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we're in our own simulations for sure. We're
Yeah.
experiencing this existence individually.
Yeah.
Does that mean that certain things that have happened don't exist? Like, I can prove gravity exists, pick something up and drop it.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Right? And we're all experiencing
Yeah.
that live on this planet with
Yeah.
a conscious existence,
Right.
right? So there's that piece of the puzzle. So yeah, we're in our own matrix, we're in our own experience. But the woo in me is like, oh, there's so much to talk about here. And the science in me is like, okay, gravity exists because we live on a spherical planet, and you know, the only way we can launch things off the planet is in a spherical pattern. And
Yeah. And
that
then what does the
proves
woo say?
gravity continues off planet.
And I'm
And
like, what is the
and
duality of the woo? You know?
right? We can see planets and we can see the moon, right? We all have that visual connection to those things. So yes, we live in a universe. We live where we can see these things as stars. And if you
Mm-hmm.
look close enough, they all have a little bit different color, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, there's so much science out there to prove all of those things, but then like the woo side of me,
Mm-hmm.
it definitely goes into, you know, when people come up with these theories,
Yeah.
something drove them to believe it and spread it, and other
Yeah.
people start to believe it. And this is kind of like the alien conversation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The government just recently straight up told us aliens
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah.
And me personally, I was like, when that happens,
Yeah.
is it going to be like rioting in the streets and people are going to lose their shit?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
it was like, oh yeah, we already knew that. And
Yeah.
that it was the latter. And I was like,
Yeah.
what? Because not everybody has had an alien
Yeah.
experience. Not everyone has witnessed weird things flying in space or, you know, in your backyard, weird lights,
Yeah.
right? But enough people have experienced it to make us go, yeah, they exist. And
Yeah.
then those of us who are in the scientific community and in the aerospace community, we're
Yeah.
like, man, wouldn't it be a shame if we were the only ones with
Right.
all of those galaxies
Yeah.
and all of those stars? We're the
Yeah.
only ones.
Yeah.
Why?
No. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of that like, okay, theories are coming out.
Yep.
When will we have to actually believe them? Right?
Love this. And
Yeah.
so, like, you're at NASA doing your thing, working on a mission that wasn't a mission yet, and like,
Yep.
in your like beautified mind, we'll call it, because it was very much obviously logistics in the way you did it, but I'm sure your
Yeah.
intuition showed up to help serve you in some way, shape, or form. So what happened with the whole NASA experience? Why did you leave, the project, or like, what does this look like for you? Like, where were you moving next? Because yeah.
Why did I leave the program? Man, that was a tough time for me. Bureaucracy definitely played a role in my
Yeah.
decision.
Hmm.
Intuition played a bigger role.
Yeah.
What that looked like when I left the Orion program, that was the first NASA program that I worked on, and then I worked on more after that. But leaving the Orion program particularly, uh, we're gonna get real personal really quick.
Yeah.
I was sexually
Welcome.
assaulted. Yeah,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
was sexually assaulted on Orion the first year that I was there,
Mm,
and the guy that did that came back to
mm,
Orion,
yeah.
and he was let go as soon as I brought it to their attention. I was like, "Listen, I will not work here. Let me know when he's gone."
Yeah.
And they took care of it. They took care of me, which was a good sign. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I was also dealing with every other month or so, I was being told, you might be let go this month. We don't know what the budget's going to look
Mm,
like, and we might have to let you go. And we really don't
mm,
want to because you've been on the program for 8.5 years and you
yeah.
have a boatload of knowledge and you're a huge asset, but we might have to let you go. And I was like, you know what, man, I'm over it. I'm over it. And I took
Yeah.
the guy coming back in the sexual assault scenario as a sign, as one of the
Yeah.
many, like, the universe is trying to point you in a different direction, sister. Let's
Yeah.
go. And so apparently I didn't catch the memo on how far I needed to go away from that. So I
Yeah.
went to another Lockheed Martin program, and lo and
Oh
behold, that
gosh.
dude was hired on the same freaking day.
Of
And it took
course he
them
was.
3.5 weeks to decide. And yeah, I'm throwing Lockheed hard under the bus right now. It
Yeah.
took Lockheed 3.5 weeks to decide that we couldn't work on the same program, but he was allowed to be on campus working on any other program. And if you came across each other, that you just had to turn and walk the other way.
Oh my gosh.
And I was
Yeah.
like, and you're going to subject other women to this man that you already know sexually assaulted someone?
Yeah.
Cool. I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So So I left
Yeah.
Lockheed Martin and the NASA programs that I was working on there, and I went to a smaller company and worked for a smaller company on more NASA programs. And again, the universe started to show me signs like it's time to go.
Yeah.
Uh, I I took a huge pay cut to work at that smaller company. And I also
Yeah.
took a huge time cut. I was only working anywhere between 15 to 20 hours a week. And with my
Mm,
spare time, because I'm a doer, or at
yeah.
least I was,
Yeah.
uh, I started an online gardening program and it became successful. And I made as much in that program as I did on the job.
Yeah.
And it took me 3 weeks to do, and I got my W-2, and this was kind of the clincher. And I was like, again, universe is showing you it's time to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I got my W-2 for last year's pay, and I was just about done with a summit launch, a virtual summit launch, and I'd
Yeah.
made the same amount of money.
Yeah.
3 weeks, 1 year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I said, "Okay, bye." And that was
Yeah.
when I exited aerospace from that
Mm,
regard.
yeah.
Uh, and it was just, listening to what are all the signs. And at that time, obviously, I was
Mhm.
more dense than I am now.
Well, you were also in a
It
really
took me
dense,
longer and
okay, we'll say that with love, dense industry that is very
yes.
much pragmatic. You think about things like it's all the mind. Whereas,
Oh,
you
it's
know,
very,
through
very logical.
your spiritual journey, it's all the heart. It's all based through
Yeah.
like here, intuition and our feeling in through the heart.
Mhm.
So completely different scenarios. I
Yeah.
talk about this all the time. So like I'm not surprised that it was challenging for you to maneuver faster out of there because you were in environments that
Yeah.
were pulling your mind forward all the time and not allowing the heart to lead, right? So I'm not surprised.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And my doctor kept on telling me, so I go to an East-West doctor, Ayurvedic MD, and
Yep.
she kept on telling me, you're killing yourself on this program. You're killing yourself. You really
Yep.
need to assess that. And I knew it because my body was a mess. I was a yoga instructor. I got my first yoga teacher certificate on that
Yep.
program on Orion. And that was where like I started to get back into my body. As an athlete, I was always in my body and I was always
Oh
trying to
yeah.
lead with this embodied experience.
Yeah.
And when my body started to fail me on the Orion program and I got pregnant with my daughter and that became really ugly too.
Yeah.
Uh that was when I was like, yeah, I really need to reassess. I really
Mm,
need to honor who I am and what I need first. And this obviously isn't it. And then going
yeah.
to the next thing, it was like, oh yeah, we're still not there, haven't landed in the right spot. And then the next one, it was
Hello?
the same thing. And I was just
Yeah,
like,
are you listening? Hello? You
now
know,
I'm an
like,
entrepreneur.
yeah, I know. And here it comes forth. So, like, when you look at like the transition of your life, like where you are in this moment now, and we'll talk about kind of the work you're doing and stuff in a second, but like, and really look back on now, it's always a journey. It always is. There's a bridge, there's always movement, there's always learning, all the stuff. But when you look back, did you drink the Kool-Aid? Like, were you like really under, or were you always kind of like, not to say that you questioned life, but you know, like, I just feel like there's a
Mhm.
transition. It's a kind of like we're not like most of us that are really awakened now doing the work, it's like we were drinking the Kool-Aid, but we weren't all in. You know, we'd have a couple sips here and there, but we always kept seeing it. But we're like, oh, that's not true, or that like we doubted the truth that we kept seeing. So like, what did I just feel called to get you to answer this? Because I think there's some stuff in this for people. Like I really feel like there's
Oh
something
yeah.
that's there. Yeah.
Excellent question. Okay. So I was always a weirdo. I was always different. And
Hmm.
you know, it's funny, you can look at like astrology. I'm a Scorpio, so like, oh, she's dark and mysterious Scorpio, very sexual Scorpio, right? And I was definitely different from the get-go. Like at
Yeah.
4 years old, I was having some of the clairs show up,
Yep.
and some of those were a little too intense for me, so I turned them off.
Yep.
Clairaudient, clairvoyant, those
Mm-hmm.
two things got shut off right away because it was just
Of
too much at
course.
4 years old.
Yep.
And so I led with feeling
Mm-hmm.
and having again that embodied experience the entire time. I'm so unbelievably conscious of what's going on in this body
Yeah.
that's what led me through all of my life experiences. When things didn't go right in my body, it's time to make a change. And
Mm-hmm.
that was always where I was led, and I was definitely different. I was the kid who was super intelligent, athletically gifted, playing with the girls who were older than me. At 12 years old, I played
Mm.
on an 18 and under softball team.
Yeah.
12 and 18 are not ages that should go together from
Yes.
a
Yep.
mental development perspective,
Yeah.
right? They are on completely different spectrums, but I was 5'8". I was, as a softball player, pitching in the 60s as a
Yep.
12-year-old. So they were like, yes, we
Yeah.
want her to play on the 18 and under. But I was dealing with women issues
Yep.
at 18 years old, and I was 12 and didn't understand that. So I was always a little weird.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
and
played
I was
ball
okay
too,
with that.
competitive. Yeah, so I get you. I was Canadian though, so we didn't like it was like not the same terms. But yeah, it's yeah. Yeah, it's the same
There's
thing.
some
Yep.
states that are on that level.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. You know, it's just like the NFL and CFL. You know, it's kind of like you know, like you know, same thing.
Close.
Yeah, so funny.
Uh-huh,
Ish.
right? But honestly, like having that embodied experience my entire
Mhm.
existence was
Yeah,
really the key to me to
yeah.
to staying connected to spirit, staying connected to who I truly am and honoring that
Mhm.
continuously. Did I drink the Kool-Aid? Kinda. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, my
yeah,
dad's an engineer, I became an engineer. My brother's an engineer. Like, yeah, we drank the family Kool-Aid, right?
yeah.
Uh, do I still use my engineering? A little bit.
Mm.
Mostly not, but a little bit.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, m most of my work now is that embodied experience and the knowledge that I gained through all of that time of understanding the body.
right.
And I really think, like, when it came to work and, have a family, get married
Mhm.
first, then have a family and, get the house with the white picket fence, like, there's
Yeah,
some of that Kool-Aid being drank. Uh Yeah, but there's still, like, the weird side of me pushing back, like, we own a house in an HOA, but I also want a beehive and chickens, and
yeah,
I do permaculture in my backyard, and the
yeah,
neighbors don't understand it, but it works. We have food in
yeah,
abundance coming off of our land, and we live on less than an acre. Like,
yeah.
I'm a little
Love
different.
it. Yeah,
Yeah. So, that I think that's where I always ebbed on that edge of, yeah, there's the Kool-Aid. I could drink a little bit of it, but
yeah.
I'm gonna make my own.
Yes, and this is powerful. Like I think the sovereignty piece is really like part of my mission on earth is for people to understand that each individual is sovereign. Each of us has all the assets and tools and divine coding to have the life we desire to live, to be sovereign in our world. And sure, we're still under infrastructures that are controlling certain mechanisms, but we don't have to play within those infrastructures of control. We can continue to be our
Mhm,
sovereign selves in the way we do life. And so I love the fact that you
mhm,
bring up chickens and bees and permaculture, and like I have a couple of really good girlfriends here that we talk about this often, and she's like, if shit hit the fan though, like what would we do? And I'm like, look, we can live off the land where we are. Like we have
mhm,
fruit trees everywhere. Now granted it won't be this balanced diet, but we can live off the
right?
lands. Like we're supported here. It's the other things that we need to start to look at and move through in conversation to have support, because back in Canada, all of us, when this whole entire pandemic thing happened, we all started shoving food in our and learning how to like can food and grow our own food, and then this whole governmental, like all the things, right? And when I moved to Costa Rica at
Mhm,
the end of
sourdough.
2022, yeah, everything, right, all of it, I gave all that away, and then I came to Costa Rica, and it's like I don't feel like we need to
Mhm,
live in the fear of, but I want people to feel empowered to know that they are sovereign in whatever way that means for them. Whether it's they have a
yep,
shit ton of cash at their house that they can be sovereign because they can pay to be sovereign, or they create it in their world, it's like it's totally the
mhm.
same thing. So I love that you brought that up.
One of my teachers, Melissa Seaman, um, she takes people through initiations, and
Mm-hmm.
she does it from an indigenous Native American perspective,
Love it.
and that sovereign place really comes in at right around 52. Now, you and I aren't 52,
Yeah,
but honoring our sovereignty is,
yeah,
looking at the people who are that age and going, I want to be like that,
yeah,
right? But
yeah.
also looking at your existence, these chapters of your life and going, yeah, I've experienced sovereignty here before. So you
Right.
don't have to
Yeah,
be at that age
yeah,
to just recognize I've sat in my sovereignty. I've sat in my
yeah.
power, right? And the power initiation is when you hit puberty. And the
So
puberty
fun.
initiation and the sovereignty initiation, they're not too different.
That's
One's at the beginning of the spectrum and the one's at the other end of the spectrum, but they're
yeah.
very close to each other. So you can look back on that puberty, that power transition, which we don't honor that in society.
Oh,
Across the board, there's very few cultures that
yeah.
honor puberty. when
Yeah.
a man or a woman hits puberty. They used to, but
Yes.
nowadays, like I remember a couple years back, we celebrated somebody's first period, and we had a period party, is what we called it. And
Yeah.
I was responsible for getting her the cake, and I put a
Yeah.
big red P on it. And it was
Yeah.
like, we're celebrating that initiation that she's going through. Nobody does that. It's not
Yeah.
done, but it should be, because
Should
it's the
be.
moment where you realize these are my gifts. These are the
Mm-hmm.
things that I have the power in. And then
Mm-hmm.
when we go to our sovereignty space, it becomes, these are the things I've developed wisdom in. And man, learning that from Melissa, just like that changed the
Yeah.
course of how I look at life now.
Yes. It's a powerful place, and when we actually
Yeah.
lean back into the way society was ran, let's say, quote unquote, because it wasn't really ran back then. Everyone just did their thing.
Yeah, it
All
was.
of the, yeah, that's true. Like for some, like I guess the traditions stay alive, but like it's like looking
Yeah.
back on this, yeah, sort of ish mechanism. Like if we go to the indigenous side, like you mentioned with Melissa, it's like, how
Mhm.
did they show up in that space? I always talk about, if I decide to have kids, and most people are like, you're 42. I'm like, guys, do not worry
You
about
can still
me
do it.
and having kids. If kids are meant for me, they will come through. Like, I'm not one that's going, oh my God, I need to have kids. I'm one that's, I'm open, but I'm feeling called. Like there's two souls are like, they're like, you need to birth these people into this world. They need to come from you. They need to be held in a certain type of energy. Okay, so like I'm open to this experience, but I said to my girlfriends, I'm like, I'm going to be the woman hanging from a tree to birth out the babies so that they can slide into the earth experience instead of have all these things. Like I'm going to do the old indigenous ways that they used to hang from vines in the trees, to be able to hold support in the right angle, to be able to let the birthing of this baby, and then they land on the land and they are held by then the land, which is the potency of an initiation power, right? And it's like, I'm going to
Yeah.
be that person. And
Yeah.
I don't care who's there. I don't care if everyone sees me naked hanging from a tree. I don't give a shit. Like, I'm going to be, this is what's going to happen. And it's going to be the coolest experience, probably. And like one of those ones that people are going to look at me and go, holy fuck, I can't believe that happened. And I'll be like, yep, it happened. Here we are,
Yep.
and, but we're turning
Love it.
back to this. See, I
Love
told
it.
you, like, you never know what we talk about on the podcast. It just leads us into these
Right.
directions. But you never know. Like, it's like this space of like what this expansion means and this birthing of these kids. But you peeked up there. I want to find out what were you being directed when I was talking about two souls coming through?
Mm.
Because you had a look
Twins.
on your face. Yeah. Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
it's twins too.
Twins.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
feel it's
definitely
twins
twin
too.
energy, and if they don't come through in the canal that way, right? If they're
Yeah.
not born in, they will have twin energy together.
Mm-hmm.
That was what came through real quick. And
Yeah.
I I I want to remind you to honor your body and what
Mm-hmm.
it needs, even though you've
Okay.
got this vision.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because getting down on all fours, they slide
Yeah.
out that way too.
Yeah. I'm gonna like whatever way is coming out, they're coming out. But I'm not doing it through the medical system. I will not be the person that
Right.
goes and to the gynecologist to get someone putting their hand up my, vaginal tract.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
gonna keep
unnecessary. Go to a
no.
midwife though. Definitely
Yeah.
get midwives involved and
Yeah.
doulas.
Yeah.
That combination of a midwifery and doula, that's powerful. I had that. I gave birth at a midwifery center,
Mm.
and my daughter was born in a tub,
Yep.
and when she landed in my arms, she was blowing bubbles.
Yeah.
So she didn't do that big lymphatic expansive breath.
Right.
Uh, and while I was focused on the baby that was turning purple that I just gave birth to, I was also struggling with passing the placenta. So they called
Mm.
ambulances for both of us.
Oh shoot. Yeah.
Yeah. Fun, crazy experience. But
Yeah.
my daughter's, she was a fish from the get go. She's a Pisces.
Of
She's
course.
a
Yeah.
fish from the get go.
Yeah.
And she, I mean, the lessons that we all got in those moments were divinely aligned,
Of
exactly the way it was
course.
supposed to be. And some people look at me and they're like, you truly believe that your daughter came into this world and had to land in the NICU? And I was like, yeah, that was the experience
Yeah.
that both of us had to have.
Yes.
And is it the ideal? No, God, no. Is it what I hoped for? Absolutely fucking not.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
But is it like, hindsight's always 2020. Like, I get it. I get why that
Hmm.
happened. And I was on all fours. My
Yeah.
husband was at my face. I was like, yeah, you don't
Yeah.
need to see this.
Yeah, that's still gonna
Yeah.
be the one thing. It'd be like, babe, can you just come behind me? Because like I just like we don't want to ruin this, Like there's still an experience that has to happen for us together in this perspective. Unless you really want to see, then
Mhm.
go for it and have a great time. But like seriously, like yeah. But maybe there's something connected to like the whole experience for the men too. Like if they're like really rooted
There is.
in that space to watch
Yeah.
the birth of the baby come through, like, yeah, some intensity
They're
there.
being born into fatherhood in that moment. That's the
Right.
moment that they realize, holy shit, I'm a dad. Before
Yeah.
that, it's just theoretical in their brain. They're not carrying the child. They don't have the responsibilities
Yeah.
for the child. They have the responsibilities for the mom,
Yeah.
right? They have the responsibility for the person who's carrying the child. And they don't like, and my husband said it to me a couple of times and I was just like, yeah, okay, I get that. Like he's like, I could read about it and I could study up on it and I could logic the shit out of it, but until
Yeah.
that child was in the world,
Yeah.
not just in your womb, but
Yeah.
in like real, and I can see that child, that's the moment they're being born into
Mm.
fatherhood. That's an initiation for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It totally is.
there's something to it, but my husband didn't need to see all
Yeah.
that until I was
Yeah.
sitting down again and baby's in my, at my chest and we're trying to get her to breathe, essentially,
Yeah.
not gurgle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gurgle. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
She
It's
was.
and
She was blowing
just
bubble.
wow. So interesting how it all. And I just got this thought process that ran through me. I just adopted two puppies. They're 9 weeks old today. I know.
Oh
I
my
got them
gosh.
at 6.5 weeks old though. Like they like were in my world young, and I'm like, why did I choose? Even this morning when I barely had any sleep, they were up a little bit. Like I'm like, why did I choose two? One would have been a lot easier because then one would have been quieter. They wouldn't be wrestling and
Practice.
yelling at each other and all. I know. And then this just clicked in when we were just talking, and I was like, oh god, like this is the
Mm,
well, and it's different with animals obviously, but the initial, like I've had
mm,
animals before, but the initiation of twins, brother and sister, I
mhm,
guarantee you they're probably gonna be male female, like this is what's gonna happen because it's just like here's the
mm.
foresight, like here it comes right through. And I'm like,
Here's the
okay,
duality.
I can do it. Like I can do it, and I'm just like, okay, all right, here it is, all right. It just
Uh-huh.
literally clicked right now, and I went, okay, thank you for that insight. So
Yeah, you're
appreciate it. Ah, as they awaken now, they're coming
welcome.
out from underneath the couch. Like just as
Well.
long as you're not gonna wrestle, come over and say hello.
Oh my
Okay,
god,
I want
we
to move
heard
into
you.
something.
We heard you talking about us.
Yeah, see, this is Clark. Yeah, that's a good boy. That's a good
Oh,
boy. Mm. You have the hiccups.
yeah.
Why are you hiccuping? Yeah, they were totally
You're
like
startling me, Mom.
sleeping. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Okay.
Preciousness.
Yeah. Well, let's talk to Amanda about her life is like now. So, she started this gardening
Yeah.
entrepreneurship business that led her into a summit that now led her into this whole other landscape of her world. And
Oh man.
I think that the whole transition is important, like, yeah. So
Yeah.
tell us about it. What shifted in there? Because we
Man.
could talk about crazy shit all day long, but I want to make sure we also talk about some of the cool shit you got going on too.
Or well, so uh serial entrepreneur. I've had
Mhm.
multiple businesses online and in person. But the latest and greatest, and it really is like finally coming to a place where it all clicks and it all makes sense
Mm,
and it all feels so right. And that's for me, clairsentient. That's the
yeah.
key for me. If it feels good in me, it's the right thing.
Yeah.
And
Agree.
so, yeah, going from NASA to being a medical intuitive. And now I
Mm-hmm.
help people through their medical issues, particularly female college athletes,
Yeah.
getting from a uncomfortable digestive situation to healed, and
Mm-hmm.
doing that by diving into their body, literally feeling what's going on in their body and my body,
Yep. Yep.
and then
Because it comes through you.
giving
Yep.
them clarity
Yep.
and the map
So
and
cool.
hope. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, when you're diagnosed with things like IBS,
Yes.
that just means
Yeah.
that the doctors don't really know what's going on in there, except it's digestive.
Yep.
And you might have diarrhea or you might have constipation. So I get to
Yep.
talk poop with people a lot.
Yeah. Whatever floats your
But
boat.
right, exactly. That apparently it's the floater. Uh,
Yeah.
so it's ironic because one of the first engineering jobs that I had was toilets,
Yeah.
vacuum water waste systems.
Oh my gosh.
And the last thing that I got to do on the Orion program was the toilet. And now I work with people talking about being on the toilet.
Yeah. I love
Toilets
it.
are the theme in my life.
Apparently.
But it really does boil down to everything that I've been doing my entire life has been
Yep.
designed around the body and around
Mm.
embodiment.
So
And
fun.
so honoring that and really going, okay, how can I better serve people with the gifts
Yeah.
that I have? And here we are being a medical intuitive.
So
Bing.
fun. Yeah. So you obviously
Wild.
tap in using your gifts spiritually. Do you
Mhm.
work a lot with like the nutrition side and like the body movement? Like how does it all come together for you? Because I've obviously read the medical medium book. And
Yeah.
just kind of cool to see like what does this look like for you? Just love to find out more.
So I'm a holistic practitioner. I deal with the mind, the body, the
Okay.
spirit, and the emotions. So when it comes to the body, we're looking at, the obvious things are sleep and
Yep.
food and water. Those are the three
Yep.
big major things to turn. And then movement. Your body has to
Mm-hmm.
have movement.
Yes, in all
So
ways.
so those are the biggies when it comes to the body.
Yep.
And then when it comes to the mind and the emotions, those two tend to be tied very closely together. Um, what is the brain doing inside of your body very specifically, because that's one of the most intricate pieces of the puzzle, is
Mm-hmm.
how is the brain telling your body what you're feeling? Because pain doesn't exist where
Right.
pain happens.
Oh,
Pain is a signal from the brain.
right.
Yeah. So dealing in that
So
mind
cool.
piece is really for me the neurological side of things. And then the emotions play a huge role in what you're feeling in your body and what's actually being experienced. And it's that chicken or egg scenario where did the
Mm,
emotions come first, or did the pain come first and the emotions came after? And how
mhm.
does that play into the healing process? And ultimately, in the healing process,
Yeah,
getting the emotional piece under control and
yeah,
understanding it wholeheartedly is usually the last thing that people have to work through, because they ignore that.
yeah,
Once the pain
of
is
course.
gone, what else do I
Yeah,
have to work on? Right? And I'm like,
yeah,
well, you have to work on that mental piece, because if you don't work on that mental piece,
it's gonna
it's going
come
to come
back.
back. You're going to
Yeah,
have
it's
this
gonna
problem
come back.
again.
Yeah,
It'll be a different layer that you have to deal with. So let's cover all those layers. And then from the
yeah,
spiritual side of the house, this doesn't necessarily land in the religious piece, but for some people it would, because they have religious restrictions around what they can and can't do.
right.
But it also
Yep.
has to do with me receiving messages from your peeps, from the
Yeah,
ancestral side of the house, from the spirit guide side of the house, from the spirit that's all around us all the time.
yep.
And I think that's the fun leap, is like looking at like, oh, you're like a NASA engineer who is really talking woo right now.
Yeah.
But it's all been
Yes.
proven.
And this is like surface woo still. Like there's still like,
Mhm.
like we could even go
Mm.
into the more depths of this, but this is the true aspect of it all. And I love how this piece is moving through. So I've been guided to ask you the question, like, what are you seeing within these athletes right now? Like, what is there a common theme of a certain energy moving through? Like, what is what is maneuvering for them right now? Because if this is where your tight niched is, then
Yeah.
there's a it's not just each individual case, although it is, but there's a theme happening in this collective
Yeah.
of energy. Like, what are they up against? What are they seeing? What are you seeing? Like, would love to just, yeah.
All right. Let's start surface level. So they're stressed. Their anxiety
Mhm.
is usually off of the charts, and
Mm,
sometimes that was before they got into the medical issue that they're dealing
yeah,
with.
yeah,
Most of the times it was before they
yeah,
got into their medical condition, this gut
yeah,
issue that they're having. And if we take it back a layer from
yeah.
there, you're looking at the parents who raised the kids,
Mm-hmm.
and what were they like? Were they also anxious? So we have
Right.
a society now of
Yeah.
overstimulated, underdeveloped
Mm,
mentally, emotionally, and physically.
mm,
And we're all in a hurry to get past the basics.
right,
And we're trying to go straight into, we've got to have all of the especially for athletes, all of the biggest and best skills that make us stand out so that we can get that college
right.
scholarship, and we bypass the foundational work.
Mm,
And we have an entire generation of that, including their parents.
right.
And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
if we scale that back a little bit farther,
yeah.
we have mental health issues across the board that have been underserved and uh, denied
Mm-hmm.
for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's all coming out and it's coming to the surface. And now we have labels for everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the labels are more harming than good.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we've got a bunch of kids
Yeah.
who have zero clue how to fix this.
Yeah.
And their parents don't have the tools. And their
Yeah.
grandparents don't have the tools. And
Yeah.
their ancestors that have passed are looking down going, we really fucked this up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And this goes so far
Mm,
beyond athletes. It goes so far beyond,
of course.
you know, college athletes. You're generally looking at the United States for that. Most European countries don't have athletes within their college system. Same for Asia. They send them all to the
Right.
United States.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're
Hmm.
really, really in a shit show from a mental health perspective. And that's the grander goody that we have to deal with here now.
And so if we were to pull this back even more about the mental health aspect, and don't mind my like puppies are going to make noise, but it's
I
my
heard.
podcast, so it's all good. It's not yours, so we're okay. Like, and I know we're going to be stuck on time soon too. I want to hold space to that, but like this movement that's coming up, we're actually in a space
Thank you.
of like healing, right? Ancestral lines, ancestral lineage, watching this all move
Mhm.
forward. So all of this is coming to the surface for us to move through. In your opinion, what is the like kicker of this? Like where do we take this from a spiritual side, from acknowledgement side, from, obviously all your medical like dynamics and even the engineering scientific side to you? What does this look at? There's a question in this somehow that you will know how to answer. you know like,
Yeah, totally. All right. So, uh, one of my indigenous teachers said
yeah.
we've entered the fifth world. 2012
Hmm.
was when the Mayan calendar ended, and my
Yeah.
question to her was, did all of the indigenous calendars end at that time? And she said,
Ah,
yes, that was the end of the fourth world. And now we're in the fifth world. And so in the fifth world, we're at the very beginning stages of it, right? 2012 wasn't in the grand scheme of things that long ago, 12 years ago.
yeah.
We are in the changing right now. We're in the
Beautiful.
paradigm shifts. We're seeing it. We're seeing more healthcare practitioners come to light. More people
Yeah.
starting to honor these woo concepts that really are backed by science, or science is catching up with them. People are actually doing the science now, which I love. Um, the future looks so much brighter. Holy cow. We're looking at like 50 years from now seeing the biggest changes.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's my child's
Yep.
children.
Mm-hmm.
So we got 2 generations before we're going to see a huge shift. The shift is more awareness around treating the brain and
Mm.
the emotions as a much bigger part of the body than just the body itself, right?
Right.
We've had a
Yeah.
huge focus on just the body itself for the last
Yeah.
the last world. And now we're really starting to dive in, and it's the science that's catching up with the indigenous knowledge. It's the science that's finally going, well, man, those Zen masters, they had
Oh
something there.
yeah. Yeah.
Let's dive deeper and study those Zen masters if they'll let us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that was the big thing. There was a in the last world, a
Yeah.
lot of those people who were practicing those esoteric things did not want to be studied. They didn't
Yeah.
want to share that information because they wanted it to be passed down within their culture. And now
Right.
we've become a collective. COVID had so many gifts for us, and it was
Oh,
COVID that made
so
us a
many.
global society.
Yeah.
Before that,
Yeah.
we recognized that there were other people out there. We knew there were
Yeah.
other countries and other cultures out there, but now we're a global society. We went through the thick of it together.
Yeah.
And because of that, we have the gift now of leveling up all of these systems that we all hate.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. We're in the beginning phases of that. And the paradigm that will come about in about 100 years will look completely different than what we've experienced in the fourth world, those of us who are alive before 2012, and what we're experiencing for probably the next 50 years. Isn't
Yeah.
that crazy?
Hmm. I love this. No, this is great. This is exactly how this is the perfect way to kind of move out of this conversation. Like I love that you brought that up as my dog peed on the
Yeah.
carpet. So like, cause he's like, I was telling you I needed to go
Puppy.
outside. I was like, buddy, you could have waited 5 minutes. Like, seriously, we need to learn this. Yeah, you. He's like looking at me from the door now. I
You
love
have
that.
permanent
And
toddler.
I do for a
Just so you
while at
know,
least.
you're in the permanent toddlerhood,
Yay! So excited.
right?
This was powerful, Amanda. Like this, I love how that just came about in the movement of what you just created for us in the visualization of seeing that. And I'm being called back to my indigenous roots. Like I am really being called to lean into the earth experience and what this is and bringing that in a very grounding way. And yeah, you just built this beautiful picture for us. So I'm just so appreciative. So appreciative. So we are on a
Yay.
time crunch, so
The
we know we
future is
need to jump
bright.
off. Yeah, I know that we could like talk
Yes.
forever, but like we're gonna obviously have all your links, ways to get a hold of you in the show notes. But like, how would you want to end this? Like, what's your last message for the people listening? Like, what would you like to say to them? I think
There
we
she
came
is.
back. There we go. Okay, yeah. I
There you go.
said,
Yeah, I lost you.
yeah, for a second. Of course you did. I said, I know we're on a time crunch, but I just want to pass you the mic to kind of close off. Like, what would you just like to say to the listeners? Like, what's on your heart to kind of close off today's episode?
Man. If you're experiencing medical issues that the doctors don't have a darn clue about, reach out. Body
Mm.
Whisper Healing is where you find me. Body Whisper, Colleen, let me know. Am I allowed to give them a little gift?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Just make sure I
Sweet.
have the link, so we'll put it in the show notes. Yeah.
I will.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So bodywhisperhealing.com/thank you listener. If you made it to this point, I am gifting you a free body scan. It's normally a
Mm.
$54 investment to have that body scan with me. I'm gifting it to you because you made it to this point, and because I know if you know what in the world is actually going on in your body, you can start taking the steps to make it better. And that's what this is all about. We're all trying to level each other up here. And
Yep.
that's what I'd like to do and serve for you.
Love that. Love that. And thank you, Amanda. Like, always appreciate the beautiful gifts and each person stepping into their space of like their wholeness and owning like their mission here on earth. So it's been amazing. I
Yeah.
love that I got to meet you. I love that we got to do this. I love that I got to hear all about space, to some degree. Like we're building rockets,
Right.
NASA, all the
Building
things we talked about
spacecraft with
an
NASA.
hour ago. But I know your time's tight
Right.
and we should be popping off soon. But I just want to say thank you. And I'm going to encourage everybody who's listening here, like I always do in all of the mechanisms I play out. Tag us, share it out, send it to a friend, message Amanda if you feel called to that. And yeah, we're just here, two people, on our mission, trying to serve the world. So let's
Yeah.
just keep moving through that and keep going. So again, thank you so much, Amanda, for being here.
Thank you, Colleen.
Yes, 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 yes. See, I told you guys, like just such an expanded conversation. And I am just so grateful to be able to serve up conversations like this. And, we surface leveled for you guys. We could have probably went into some meat and some stuff. And, before we hit record on the podcast episode, we were talking about Jesus and religion and about Jesus's birthday and, all of these formatted holidays. And there's just so much that we can move into in connection with truth. But I think Amanda really summarized and brought it together at the end of this whole entire mechanism that we're moving within. And I want to remind all of us your power and your truth. And how are you stepping into that? And how are you following the nudge and that intuitive flow, like the divine alignment that you are meant to serve within? Because each of us has that. It's just so powerful. And I'm just so grateful. I'm grateful for all the guests. And like I say, and every single time I do this podcast, help us share the episode out. Tag us. Give us a review if you're listening to this on iTunes as well, because all of that helps get eyes to the podcast. And the more people that are listening, the more people that are feeling the truth move through this. And if you guys take a snapshot of this and tag us on Instagram, Amanda's handle is in the show notes as well. We just want to hear from you and to know that you're listening, that you're paying attention, that you got something from this, whatever that is, and just loving all of that. So we'll see you guys all again soon in the next episode, Light Warriors Unleashed podcast.